Hey guys.
Yes.
Hey Vinny.
One second, get the microphone plugged in. Sorry.
Okay.
Where is it?
Remember to
My
precious.
There we go. Good.
What?
He said, remember to talk about
The video that you're gonna edit it and.
Thank you so much for
gonna
meeting
provide
with
it to
us
him.
today.
Okay.
One moment, please. Yes. Sorry about the disorganization.
It's early there, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, much earlier than I normally do a show, yeah. Okay. But when I first started doing this, I was doing them at 5 days a week,
Oh my gosh.
3 till 5 o'clock in the morning. So that, and because the United States is a day behind New Zealand, I was doing it Tuesday through Saturday rather than Monday through Friday. So it fucked every single weekend for 6 months while I was doing that. Yeah.
So are you saying it's Sunday right now where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fascinating.
So it's just the little things that we do to make things more confusing.
Right.
Living on opposite sides of flat discs, apparently, like.
It's the lighter side of genocide, huh?
Oh yeah. Okay, so are we all ready to record? Or are we already recording?
I think we're already recording. So we'll.
Hey, that's a good question to start off with. Hey, are we all ready to record, or are we already recording?
Yeah.
Yep. So I thank you so much for coming on today and letting us interview you. I'm excited. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, kind of wanting to know what's going on with the new regime in New Zealand. As far as are you still out there on this streets with your bullhorn, protesting the scumbaggery and everything?
Well, we were protesting chemtrail scumbaggery last weekend, and this weekend it was going to be medical marijuana scumbaggery, and the weekend before that it was vaccination scumbaggery, and the week before that it was 1080 poison and fluoride scumbaggery. So there's different kinds of scumbaggery that are exactly the same kinds of scumbaggery that you guys are facing up there in the United States, occurring on a daily basis, and without a proper financed alternative media. Essentially, the voluntaristic side of me just goes, okay, he who has the ability has the responsibility. Is somebody else going to be at that protest to film it and megaphone and make jokes and then actually fucking edit and upload said video?
Right.
No?
Right.
4 million people in the country, and there's not one except me? That's really frustrating and kind of shameful.
It is. It really is.
So what would you say is your biggest top priority on your platform right now?
I don't know. I think I don't have any. My priority is the truth, and the truth comes in many different facets. It even comes in the forms of lies and things that are completely made up. Because what was my old saying here? I listen to so many different people, right, about so many different topics, whether I believe them or not. I just have a conversation with them that is agreeable and nice and friendly, so that if they are telling the truth, nobody gets in the way of them to speaking it out. But if they are full of crap, I give them enough rope to hang themselves with. And I simply hope that my listeners practice discernment when it comes to that. So I'll be talking about psychopaths one week, or secret space program the next. And then we just go straight down into just the fluoride issue or vaccination issue. And as a result, in the New Zealand sphere, I've become politically toxic, because I don't care about preconceived notions or beliefs and things of that nature. I'm merely interested in ingesting new information and talking to the people who are actually purveying that information. Because like most of my listeners, I guess listeners to all types of truth media, after you finish listening to a show, you don't go and research and back up and have a look through all of the things that were said, because there's so many things that were said that would consume your life just to focus on the inaccuracies or whatever of one single shot.
It's literally a sea of information. So almost by speaking it, you're almost making it true, because nobody's going to check the facts.
Yeah, that's right. About 30% of people will believe anything they're told. 30% will require some kind of evidence, and 30% will require a lot of evidence to convince them otherwise. And interestingly enough, about the 30% of people who believe anything they're told, the amount of people that, according to a recent straw poll, believe in the mainstream media and what it says is roughly 30%.
Wow. Honestly, in this day and age, that doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. Just because, at least in this part of the world, we have someone that's constantly telling everyone that anybody else, even mainstream media, is false. So it doesn't surprise me that number is so low.
Yeah, his initials begin with AJ.
Yeah, I'm doing another emergency report, just like I did yesterday. And this is the most important broadcast we've ever done, and you need to share it around everywhere. Just like I had asked you to do yesterday, and repeated that this is the most important report we've ever done, like I did yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that,
and keeping everybody constantly on edge.
Right. Well, that's 24-hour media. That's what it did to the world, right?
He's a fearmonger.
Yeah.
In the greatest sense of the word.
Well, fearmonger is such a loaded term. Now, to monger is to crave and to push out and propagate. All right, the Iron Man's first bad guy that he was ever up against was a man called the Ironmonger, who created a suit very similar to Tony Stark's and tried to take him down. You see this in the first Iron Man movie to a degree. And now I'm seeing that exact same dynamic play out with the mainstream media and the alternative media. You have portions of the alternative media who are trying to look so mainstream that they've become mainstream. And all the truths and things of that they once told out people about looking out for the Freemasons and the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations and all of these other globalist affiliated platforms. Now they say, vote Trump, even though the only people that made it into his cabinet are from all of those globalist groups, which we told you is what to warn you about.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'm seeing this from afar, and the exact same dynamic plays out here in New Zealand, though. I do a video called The Real Criminal History of John Key Exposed in 6 minutes. 33rd degree Freemason, Wall Street banker, Harvard educated, works for Anthony Krieger, who is the #1 most corrupt capitalist of all time on official records. He's being touted as that. Right, and we're talking about he's the head of bonds and derivative trading just before the 2008 stock market collapse, right, which was caused by derivatives, according to Money Magazine.
Insider information.
So I make that video, and then my YouTube channel gets taken down a week before the election goes out.
Wow.
All right, and then he gets re-elected.
John Key does?
Yeah. And then the next election, 3 years later, we do 3-year election cycles instead of 4. I put out his entire, complete criminal history, right? And it's like an hour and a half of content going through the man's past and how that actually relates to the running of New Zealand. And now he's part of the elite and his cronies and so on and so forth. And New Zealand elects him again.
Wow.
I can't believe it.
And then, all of a sudden, because we've been talking about John Key doing money laundering ops here by doing these massive casino deals and things like that in the city centre with huge major corporations with government money, right? Mm-hmm. Just, oh my God. You're using government money to literally give to private corporations so that they can make something that they will own and don't have to give you a share in? Why is that? This is the worst kind of socialism I've ever seen, and this guy's talking about free markets and this kind of thing. I was part in Wall Street and blah blah blah. Never seen anything like it. Wins 3 terms in a row, and then at the end of last year he goes, "Oh, I'm standing down now for personal reasons." And what? Like. There was a big portion of the New Zealand population who've hated this guy for his success for nearly a decade, right? The hate was palpable. Any anti-John Key protest was just like, Yeah, it was just cheese for the mice that had been living off scraps for their entire life, man. They just poured into the streets in record numbers almost every single time. And then he just stands down all of a sudden. And a lot of people started celebrating, but I didn't. I started to see, oh my God, look into his case history again. Where was his first job? Oh, he was working as a Forex trader. Just when the New Zealand dollar got made public on the overseas market, at a time when he was in business with Andrew Krieger, who had enough money in a slush fund to purchase every New Zealand dollar that was available on the market, enough to tank our economy and shoot the price up of that dollar so that he could then sell it and make a hell of a lot of the money, even if it cost 100,000 New Zealanders their jobs. That was his first freaking job, man. 1980 stock market crash caused by one guy, insider trading, who later became the Prime Minister.
And that his name is Key?
John Key.
I can't believe this shit.
In the financial community, he's known as Inky. Right? He's a slippery of a character. And maybe it's because whenever he does something like that, the country that he's working in or the company he's working for will collapse. So first time he did that, New Zealand economy in the 80s collapses, 100,000 Kiwis out of jobs. Okay. Next time that happens, it happens to Merrill Lynch, where he was one of their lead representatives on the board of the Federal Bank of New York. Merrill Lynch goes under, gets swallowed up by Bank of America, which John Key now owns shares in.
Right.
He then goes on to the board of the Bank of New York, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, does a whole bunch of work in Ireland, and then he puts all his money into blind trusts, leaves Ireland, comes back to Wall Street, and the Irish tiger economy blows up. He then starts to work on Wall Street a little bit more, selling more derivatives, and then he leaves Wall Street and comes to New Zealand. And then the Wall Street 2008 financial apocalypse happens.
Oh my gosh.
And the same year, he gets elected Prime Minister of New Zealand, saying that he will help save us from this financial crisis. And in the 9 years he was Prime Minister, we went from $8 billion in debt. This is all previous New Zealand governments combined. There's about 180 years odd of debt, $8 billion, to about $200 billion. In 9 years.
Wow.
He raped the economy.
And this is the beautiful part right here. And it still makes me... Sir John Key.
Oh,
he got a knight.
He just handed it right over, didn't he?
Just say the words, Sir John Key. Just once, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me it doesn't make a phlegm ball of explosive proportions. I chop in the back of your throat. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I really hate the guy, and it was a really.
You talked about him being a Freemason, and what do you think that has done to help him to do what he's done?
Well, he's not just a Freemason. He's also a banker. He's also Harvard educated. He's also connected with the globalists, and he's also Jewish. Right? Just all coincidences. A Freemason Jewish banker became the Prime Minister of New Zealand. All right? And Freemasonry is very strong in New Zealand. In fact, the beehive itself, our Parliament building, was designed by a Freemason. It's the ideal Masonic society of order with a queen at the top and all the workers and slaves underneath. And it has a black and white tiled Masonic floor inside Parliament. And that's a Masonic theme, which means that there is dark, like lies, murder, deceit, that kind of thing. And there is light, truth, compassion, etc. And they believe that they need to use both in order to maintain control. So they'll tell you the truth and they'll care about you on occasion, but most of the time they're just lying to you and killing you. And when you look at how governments work and operate, that's kind of what's happening, isn't it?
Very true.
They kill you as they care for you. Isn't that loving?
So
Isn't it psychopath?
Very true.
So in terms of being a Freemason, coming into thing here, it reminds me of, I think might be the Honourable John Banks, who's a 33rd degree Freemason in New Zealand here, who got given a donation by Mr. Kim.com. And Kim.com was asked by him to split the $50,000 check into two $25,000 checks, because you don't have to report where your donations come from if they're under the $30,000 mark.
Right.
And when this was touted up in the media as being some form of corrupt practice, which it is, John Banks immediately went to the police and admitted that he did it. Now, he's a former police commissioner. He went to court, and the evidence was overwhelming, right? Pretty straightforward, open and shut case. And the trial went on for months and years. And eventually, they go, okay, you've breached the public trust, you've broken this law, which carries a minimum 8-year sentence in jail, you've broken this law, which carries a minimum 2-year sentence in jail, but in New Zealand, we don't serve those consecutively, they all get smoshed onto the up, so talking about 8 years possible in jail. And then the judge, who just so happens to be a Freemason, goes, but despite all these crimes and everything like that, you've done such great work for the community as the mayor. You've stood for honourably in Parliament as the leader of the ACT party, which basically rubber stamps it. We've got like tiny little parties that mix in with the big parties here. And because you've done all of this community work, and he just keeps rolling down this list, right? And I'm sitting there in the courtroom thinking to myself, oh my God, he's going to let him get the frick away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Going to let him off.
This down, and he winds up getting with curfew on the weekends.
Oh,
after day, right?
I mean, he can't even go to the pub. I mean, what's that?
Right.
Okay, and so
He probably has a pub in his house.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
So this by itself, however, was a landmark case, because the only time that a private prosecution had been brought against a corrupt politician and actually convicted him. First time it had ever happened. This was big, man. This was big. This was huge. There was a media scrum of scum that was just... I'd never seen anything like it before. What questions did the media ask him? Oh, so what are you going to do now, Graham? He was the prosecutor. What are you going to... And he goes, oh, well, I'm going to go home and probably do my washing or whatever. Oh, that's a nice suit you're wearing. Oh, my God. Just... There's a time in the justice system when you see that justice really doesn't work, because at that point, I think it should have been legal to stab people just, for asking things like that. Just
why did they let you ask him any questions?
I did. And I asked him questions about what this sets as a precedent for corruption being in New Zealand, seeing as on Transparency International's list we're the least corrupt country in the world, which I think reflects the reality that we are the best country in the world at concealing our corruption.
Yes, you're number one.
And we actually have the third most out of all the countries in the world, including India and China and all of these kind of places. We have the third highest per capita homeless population.
I did not know that.
Wow.
We don't even have a constitution, right? The Bill of Rights are just kind of general guidelines rather than rules and stuff like that.
Is there just an amazing amount of natural resources there? Like, y'all just got all the coal, all the natural gas, everything you can just imagine. How many people live in New Zealand? Okay, I'm glad you touched on that. And do y'all just get a check? Shouldn't you just get a check every month if there's only about 500,000 of y'all and then you got all this natural resources? Nah. What we'll do is we'll do exactly what happened to Brazil, what happened to Yugoslavia, what happened to every single country that's accepted World Bank loans, got in massively in debt, then get exchanged for natural resources. All right, so now previously unexplored oil reserves, untapped gas reserves, unmined national parks. Are owned by banks now.
unfracked waterways, all of these pristine things which we deem natural capital. Like, you'd have to pay a lot to live here, so it's in the public trust, so it's beauty that everybody can enjoy for free. That's what called natural capital. However, if you put a strip mine there and you use, I don't know, let's say 1 million litres of sulfuric acid in order to get all the minerals out that you want over the course of time. And let's say you use, I don't know, 1 billion litres or so of natural, fresh New Zealand river water that you divert per year in order to do this kind of thing. You know, it's just natural resource rape after they get the country in debt. Tale as old as time, even older than Beauty and the Beast.
Oh yeah, they've been doing it the whole time. They do that same stuff right over here in Texas. You know, all the fracking and all that stuff, injecting those that chromium, that hexavalent chromium, injecting it down into the very water that we're drinking and shit. You know, maybe not around here, but over where they got these more country motherfuckers, you know, living out there, and they give them free water in bottled water. I mean, what kind of legacy is that? You know, they poison the water for your children and stuff, and you're over here, you know, accepting your goddamn, you know, bottle of water.
Yeah. Number one rule of Agenda 21, get people off the land, get them into the cities. All right. If you're poor and you're in the country, you're real poor. If you're poor in the city, you know, you can walk to different places and things like that, you know. But in the country, it's miles between anywhere that you've got to go through, and so not having the money for the gas, let alone a car, let alone rent or something like that, is, well, let's just put it like this. In Northland, which is one of the most poverty-stricken regions of New Zealand, their capital city, Kaitaia, is the country's leader in suicide and murder.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so
is it easy to get in a fight in that town?
One can only hope.
That's terrible.
But yeah, it's the problem with New Zealand is that we've got a really great public relations office that tells everybody we're 100% pure, that we're all friendly and kind and everything like that. That's actually just the Kiwis that live here that come overseas and things like that, because they hate it here. They don't get paid enough, and it's too slow. You know,
it is too. Yeah, but some people do get the idea that a lot. You know, there is a lot of rich people there, but you know, so is it mostly white people? What is, you know? Let's just break down the demographics. How many people live in New Zealand?
All right. Well, the primary immigrants that we take are English people, people from England. You know, and there is also now a heck of a lot of increase in Asian immigration from China specifically, and Indian immigration as well, because they're also part of the Commonwealth, which was set up by the British Empire, and so there's lax visa laws, lax immigration laws by comparison to if you're coming to a Commonwealth country from another Commonwealth country, so on and so forth. But I think it was a politician named Winston Peters who cited this to me, that Finland, which has no gang violence, no people dropping out of school, is closing prisons, and so on and so forth. Huge points up there for every kind of conceivable thing that you would think of as a good and happy life in society. They allow 500 immigrants per year, permanent immigrants, to get citizenship per year. That's a country of, I think, maybe roughly 5 or 6 million people. New Zealand has about 4 million people plus, and we allow in approximately 50,000 immigrants per year.
Wow. I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
I heard it was real hard to get into New Zealand.
Oh, it is, and they milk you for all you're worth as well, because living here is so much better by comparison to living in other places, even though it's got its own problems, which they don't tell you about until you've gone through the immigration process.
Which is a hostage. It's almost like they're taking you hostage, you know, to get that money out of you and stuff.
Well,
you know, you can come to New Zealand and, you know.
Yeah, well, if you've got the money. Okay, so there's 2 different routes of immigration in New Zealand. If you've got the money, if you don't got the money. If you do got the money, $500,000 in government bonds gets you and your entire family residence. Right?
Just like
If
that.
you don't got the money, you got to do, but there's also all other things, your medical checks and so on and so on. But if you don't got the money, there's a 3-phase thing. They charge you a decent amount when you first come in there, and then every single time you go through a phase, they increase the amount that you got to pay them, and you have to do another medical check to see that you don't have any diseases and so on and so forth, and get all these references and blah, 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 blah. It's a freaking nightmare. And then they do that in phase 3 as well, where they up the price or whatever. So by that time, you're so deep in the hole because you've been trying to pay for your immigration into this country that in order to continue to stay here and have all that money that you've borrowed usually to get in here, in order for it to be not for naught, you have to borrow even more. And then even then, there's no guarantee of getting your citizenship, right? And we're talking about people who come in here, I don't know, South Africans, for example. There's a huge South African population living in the North Shore of Auckland, where I live. And we're talking about people who've seen rape and murder and stuff like that going in the streets ever since apartheid ended, and there was no military in the streets keeping order. All of a sudden you've got millions of uneducated homeless people who now have equal rights to everybody else, who are more or less still believing in witch doctory and that kind of thing. You're talking about, like, in the literal case, savages. And they try to come to a place like New Zealand to escape that kind of thing. And then their government says to them, we're not going to allow you to take your money. Like, I know one South African family who actually had to ship over car tires, right? Like just a couple of rims with the tires over it that were full of money in order to get their money out of South Africa when they came to New Zealand, right? It's and then of course they have to deal with all the New Zealand immigration problems as well. It's just everywhere you look. I was having a conversation with a friend about this the other day. Everywhere you look, you kick over a rock and there's some rot underneath in this country. It's so deep. It's so superfluous. It's absolutely everywhere. And the only people that don't seem to notice it are the people who are doing it to other people, right? If you're making a hell of a lot of money off of crashing economies and being a scumbag, you've got a psychopathy problem most likely. And psychopaths are emotionally removed from the consequences of their actions. So they can hurt people, they can, by extension, make people in the country homeless and
objectify humans,
commit suicide and homicide against each other by the actions that you've committed on a country as a whole, economically speaking, bankers being able to create money out of nothing, whatever. And with no emotional sort of consequence for that, you will continue to do it until you see some form of consequence from it. And usually that winds up in a Marie Antoinette type situation where your
peasants are coming.
Yeah.
With their pitchforks.
You know, that's the extreme case. I would prefer it not to come to bloodshed. I would, I had this fantasy. This is not a real thing. It's just spitball an idea kind of thing. It's said that if you put a psychopath on a desert island without anybody there to torment and torture and feed off, that it doesn't matter how much food they've got, how much shelter, they'll die. And I thought, it'd be interesting to test that.
Do your own Castaway reality TV show?
Yeah, well, in, Survivor, I mean, mate, talk about Survivor. If it's not staged like Survivor is, if there aren't hotels right nearby that everybody goes and stays in, if there aren't like a road right behind the cameras that are being shot and that kind of thing, it's so fake that it's not amazing. But what if it was real and you actually turned it into a form of entertainment to put known and convicted psychopaths who have scored very high on the psychopathy scale all on an island together, and just name it Absalom just for fun, and just have cameras all over the place, in the trees and the ground and that kind of thing, wirelessly transmitting all this footage back to us in the rest of the world. They got no technology there, but the rest of the world actually gets to watch.
Now that was a movie. They had that
a-
wrestler that was in that movie. That was
Yeah.
just like that. There were a bunch of
Escape from-
prisoners, and they threw him down there to have this, like, Hunger Games type of deal.
Yeah. In New Zealand, it was called Escape from Absalom. I'm not sure what the American title was.
Y'all have movies like we have, but the titles are slightly different.
Yeah. It's a marketing thing.
Oh, fascinating.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe it was called No Escape.
No
No
Escape.
Escape. Yeah, with the wrestler Jesse Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Ah. I never saw it, but I know what movie you're talking about. Yeah.
That
Now-
beer drinking wrestler.
Yeah, and it's depicted a future where they've got machines in their prisons that can read your mind. So if you try to escape or try to think about something nice or whatever, you'll wake up and go ah, and your head will start hurting. And a place where private prisons have become such a huge business and such huge human rights violators that they thought, well, why have rights? Why have guards? Why have anything? Why don't we just put all the worst criminals that are very difficult to handle and very difficult to deal with on an island together and have a perimeter around it and make sure that they can't frickin' escape? And I'm thinking to myself, that's actually not entirely dissimilar from the current US prison population system. All they've done is created zones that are protected, that you can't escape from, whereas inside it's kind of lawless. The guards can do whatever they want to you.
It just depends on what state you're in, or if you're in the federal penitentiary. They're all different.
Well, in some states, the prisons will be given subsidies from the state. The private prisons will be given subsidies from the state.
It's all corrupt for all
to
get out.
continue to keep people in prison. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people now whose lawyers aren't even contacting them back because the lawyer is getting a backhand from the prison chief.
It's all a racket.
Right, and we're talking about the biggest prison population in the world and the most executions in the world simultaneously in a country that professes how free it is all the time, when it has per capita the most amount of people who are literally infallibly unfree.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
And I know a little bit about that, because that's part of my story. I was locked up for years fighting for my life and fighting for my pride every motherfucking day in the Texas penitentiary system, But and I'm not going to make any move to defend them. But in the late '70s, they had a system here in, way before my time, back in the where they had these guys called turnkeys, and these were the toughest, meanest prisoners they had, and they would have a turnkey to control that whole building or whatever. They'd also give them a little miniature baseball bat, and believe it or not, a little miniature Bowie knife. So it was just rampant rape, selling. I mean, it was just the most, atrocious thing ever. And then they decided to get rid of it. And when they did, every one of those prisoners that had ever been one of these turnkeys over a period of about 5 or 6 years, every one of them got assassinated. Till not one of them. Then there was thousands of them that got killed because it was just like a satanic system, basically. You get a guy that's about 250, 260 pounds. It's a pretty badass guy, and then you give him a little baseball bat and a knife and a key to the door and said, okay, these are, I guess, essentially all your bitches or whatever, if you need some help from the guy next door or whatever. I mean, that is just barbaric. And that's the way that the Texas prison system was run as far as as late as 1978 or 1979, if you can fucking believe that shit. And that's the type of environment that Clyde Barrow came out of, with Bonnie and Clyde. People are wondering why he went so, radical. It's because he was in there getting his butt taken by...
I think it just goes back to the issue of, the prison system is not in the business of rehabilitation. They're in the business of making money. And that's where the issue comes down to.
It's also another thing with part of the occult world that we live in is each thing that you do has multiple objectives. So, for example, if you have a prison system like that, not only can you make money off of it, but the people who you do release into society will create a climate of fear because they've been so damaged that they will then go on to damage other people. Right. And then you can justify bigger budgets for the police departments. Then you can justify even bigger budgets for the prison systems. Then you can justify taking away people's rights and so on and so forth. All goes into the pool. All that war and poverty and genocide stuff and viruses, anything that you can get out there that will scare the shit out of people. Because the ideal is...
Scarcity.
Well, oh yeah. The ideal is to get people in a state of fear. Okay, for one very specific reason. Your hemispheres of your brain, your frontal lobes, your mammalian cortex, every part of your brain that does thinking and emotion clicks off when you're really, really afraid. And your lower cortex, your reptilian brain that governs your fight or flight response takes over. That's why people who are afraid don't appear to think, because they're not thinking, they're in survival mode. That's why it's so much better to make people afraid when they're listening to your radio show, because they will continue to listen, scared out of their mind, unable to turn away, right, and unable to think of a thing that could possibly be better than this to listen to. The truth, it's that kind of thing.
It's easier to imprint them with the information.
I'm struggling at the moment, just trying to get across to people the importance of patience and listening and caring and feeling and thinking, right? Just in a general kind of way. And and laughing, of course, right? How many shows do you listen to where you go through that whole spectrum of human emotion, that it isn't just straight at you the whole time trying to hold your attention? All right, they're very, very few, because it allows for deep introspection. And it's not that there are very, very few; it's that they're not very popular.
Right.
Okay, and there's only a small percentage of the population. And it reminds me of what I said to my mate Arik Rice, who made the film Drug Lord. That it was a great film, bro. But there's a reason there weren't many people in the seats watching that documentary, because he made it for an intelligent audience. Right. Now, is it me, or is being able to think kind of like a burden, right? And despite the fact that it is kind of like a burden, it's a moral obligation that you continue to do it if you can. Now, I see other people who can think, and Listen told me about this the other day. His sister said, I don't want to think about that stuff, because if I do my research into it, then I'll have to do something about it, and I just don't want to.
Right.
Just that laziness, that abdication of personal responsibility, and that's the killer here. It ain't taking responsibility that'll kill you. It's sitting back, having a beer, enjoying the finer things in life while the world goes to hell in a handbasket. That's what will kill you.
And that's the American paradigm. Maybe people see all these bad things going on, but nobody wants to rock the boat. They're just now getting, or they can see on the horizon they're fixing to get this job, with this new car or something, or their business is fixing to start. Their neighbor's making it. Things maybe are starting to look good. And it's just nobody wants to, be the one out there, being the Paul Revere or whatever,
It's the what was it? A children's story called The Little Red Hen or The Little Brown Hen. I forget. But she went
Little,
around.
The sky is falling. Is that what you're talking about?
No. It wasn't Chicken Little. It was another chicken, right? And she wanted to make some bread.
Yes, I know this story. Yeah. Okay.
So the little chicken went around asking the cow, "Hey, can you give me a hand making this bread?" The cow goes, "No, I got other things to do." Goes to the pig, "Hey, bro, can you give me a hand doing this bread?" And he goes, no, I'm too busy. Ask all the farmyard animals.
Right.
And then eventually the chicken goes, all right, I have to make the bread myself.
Right.
And so she did. And when the bread was cooking, the smell of how good it was starting to waft in through the air in the whole farmyard. And all the other animals were like, oh, can I have some, bro? Can I have some? And the chicken was like, no. You didn't do anything to help.
Right.
And this dynamic works very well in the truth movement, man, especially on YouTube comment sections. You should do this. Why aren't you covering that? I don't. Whatever these people are on, it's just, okay, let's have a look at your YouTube channel count. 1 subscriber. You haven't contributed anything. Block, and the scum is gone. You don't have a right to comment and treat people so heinously, bro. Gone. I don't want to have to deal with you. You can learn that lesson after being blocked or whatever. Maybe you can create a fake account and leave another abusive message, but you're gone. It doesn't matter what you do. You're going to be blocked. Every single one. And it doesn't matter to me if it seems somewhat unfair that I don't spend a hell of a lot of my time trying to understand somebody who I don't even know, who wanted to just be a dick for some reason.
Right.
And didn't
wanted to
know
troll, make them feel better. Yeah.
It's just like a bit of courtesy and respect to each other might be an idea. Maybe laxing that principle is what got us into this position in the first place, where the government doesn't frickin' respect any of us or our rights or whatever. It's, yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to what you talked about with fear, anger, hatred. Those are also ways to control people, you know. I mean, and stupidity, like you talked about. Stupidity keeps people, you know. If you stupidity and poverty are some of the biggest problems as well, dealing with the same things. If you are trying to just make ends meet, you don't have time to think globally.
Well, I think that's maybe why I started doing what I'm doing is asking for donations, not having advertisers and sponsors and things like that to, you know, threaten to withdraw their money if I put on a
Cloud
guest.
Your judgment. Right.
You know, but I still have guests on that will cause donors to unsubscribe and things like that, except when it's a $1 donor or a $5 donor or a $10 donor per month, it's not something that's they're not capable of holding that over me and saying you need to do this, otherwise that. Right. Which I felt very strongly about in terms of where your money comes from and how it can control what you're doing, because I don't like the idea of a job. I have what's known as employophobia, a fear of gainful employment. And the point when somebody gets to tell me what to do and I don't actually have a choice about it, that makes me feel horrible and I can't do it, right? Yeah, there's been so many things that have been offered to me and been given to me, in fact, that I haven't been able to do anything with because I can't.
Right.
You know? Just had some bad work history experiences, 3 times in a row.
Right. I think your message of truth is hard to continue to do when you do have a boss. You can't continue to always speak your truth. If you have someone else that's might be influencing you, even when you don't want them to, it's just, it's easy for that to happen. So I can understand your reservation.
Yeah, well, there's a spectrum on that. So there's certain people you hold your tongue around, like
right. Knowing when it's time to speak and when it's not.
Yeah. Like girls, what was saw this interesting analysis. A guy was watching a group of girls speak amongst themselves, and they couldn't see him or anything like that. And he was like, "Oh my God, these women are horrible." and it was just the point of fact that you could reverse the situation and have guys doing guy speak and a girl watching them kind of thing. There's a different dynamic to how guys speak with guys and girls speak with girls when there's nobody else observing. And I think that dynamic actually works along a broad spectrum of things and demographics, like there's a difference between how you speak when you're a politician, when you're around people you're trying to get to vote for you, and there's a different way you speak when you're a politician when there's people you want to give you campaign contributions.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't want to get people's votes, and I don't want to get their campaign contributions. I don't want to promise them anything other than I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And that's the number one comment I get actually from people all the time. Just keep doing what you're doing.
There you go.
I think I'm on the right track.
Yeah, I think you are too. Let me tell you, you've been banging this out for a number of years, hadn't you? At least 5 or 6 years now, right?
10 years.
10 years. Oh my gosh. Well, now what about you're still doing all your marketing and your web services? Are you still doing that stuff?
Haven't been doing it so much at the moment. I mean, I can teach people in record time. Like you could probably learn in a year of doing a study that will cost you maybe $5-6 grand, maybe 10. How to do web development, video editing, audio editing, and social media, and all of the other things in between, Skype recordings and blah, 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 blah. Like the whole spectrum of things that I can do just for running a radio broadcast and a YouTube channel and a social media network and a website.
And are continuity funnels? Are you using any continuity funnels?
I don't know exactly what that is,
right.
Although in Dunedin, where I did a lot of drinking as a student, a continuity funnel was where you had a funnel in your mouth.
I like that. Yeah, that's kick-ass.
Cheers to the
like a big beer bong or something, I think is what we call it here.
We call them a beer
Texas,
bong, so, yeah.
Hence a continuity funnel.
Yeah. Wow.
But I digress. What were we talking about? Okay, so let's say I'm teaching you, and I just teach you the way I do things, which is quick, simple, click at this, point that, so on and so forth. No bullshitting around, no technical jargon or anything like that. Just get it done as quickly as humanly possible. After an hour or so, you now know how to upload and edit a YouTube video. After another hour or so, you now know how to edit and post blogs on your own website. After another hour or so, you know how to share all that stuff on social media, including creating all your new pages and all of that kind of stuff. You can create a multimedia, the beginnings of a multimedia empire in as little as 6 hours of work. All right? Provided you got somebody who knows what they're doing showing you how to do it.
Yeah, like your courses.
Yeah. And so I haven't tutored too many people in how to do this because, there isn't a lot of demand. A lot of people want to go the traditional route of doing it themselves and then spending all the years experimenting like I have. And after 10 years of knowledge, I can
or going the opposite road and using a market company that doesn't care or is not invested or partnering with them, and so there's a win-lose competition between them. Marketing.
Well, for me, it's all about compassion and what people are needing. They're like, how much do you charge? And I go, well, that depends. How much can you actually afford? Right? You give me $1 a month or whatever, I can give you $1 a month worth of service. But if you give me $200 an hour, you're going to get that quality of service. What is it that you can afford? What is it that you want? What is it that you're going to be creating after these services? Am I
what tier of services do you want? I mean, are you like the top drawer or top glove or whatever you call it? Right? What suite of I get it.
And I record all the tutoring sessions as well. So if you forget what the hotkey was for this particular thing, if you forget how to edit a video or whatever after only just doing it the first time across Skype, or you've got the saved video there to refer back to of your conversation with me and that kind of thing. So I've done this for about maybe 4 or 5 people so far, and each of them have not needed to come back. And that was the ideal, I think, is to concentrate what you're learning, record it for you so that you can't forget it, and give you all the tools that you need so that you no longer need help from anybody with your media empire. You do your website yourself, you do your social media yourself, you do your YouTube yourself, you do your radio show yourself, all the editing, all the audio, everything. And that way it all works in a perfect circle. You never need anybody to help you other than just asking for donations to just pay your bills. And then it just comes down to how much time you're willing to devote for it. Are you any good? because you can't teach talent. That's there. You can teach somebody the skills. They could help somebody who has talent. Easy peasy.
So you get all your money from donations, Vinny? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. But they're not donations in the classic sense. They're essentially gifts, because nobody gets anything back for their donations. Nobody gets promised anything as a result of their donations. There's no list of where these donations are going and how much they are and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I only really ask for them when I really, really, really badly need them. And I explain to people exactly what it is. We need a warrant and registration for the car so that we don't get pulled over by cops. We need the power bill paid so that we can keep the heating on because it's bloody cold. I need $30 for lunch, so on and so forth.
Right.
But other than that, people are donating regularly, have been doing for nearly a decade, and that's just money coming in all the time, whether or not I get out of bed to work. And the fact that I get out of bed usually 4 o'clock in the morning, most mornings, and work the whole day. From home without the travel time to get to an office, without the amount of time it would take to go
have a lot of mental energy into it.
You
so always keep your stuff very updated. I'm very impressed with that.
Yeah,
publishing all the time.
Easy. It's not easy, man. It is a hell of a lot of work.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, even doing it as long as I have, with the amount of skills that I've developed and time saving and so on and so forth, it's so mentally exhausting. Like, there's this condition called decision fatigue. Now, you get up in the morning. What's your first decision? Oh, you go take a piss. Okay. Done. What's your next decision? Oh, I need a coffee. Okay. Done. What's the next decision? Need a glass of water. Next decision, go take a shit. What's the next decision? Need breakfast. What's the next decision? I need this. And you'll actually see that there's a tree of decisions that start up when you're going around your day. Now, this affects people in a very, very real way, because each decision that you make takes away from your mind's ability to make another decision. Now, this dynamic worked out very interesting in a court sample that was taken, whereby in the morning, when you're awake, when you're alert, when you're doing your thinking and that kind of thing, they'll find out in court that about 75% of the court judgments that are rendered against people will be positive between the hours of 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. And that approximately 90% of the outcomes for the people will be negative after those hours. Right? It's decision fatigue. You're making too many choices. That's why you're not writing your book. That's why you're not making your radio show. That's not why you're not editing your videos. That's why you're not sharing your things around in 30 different Facebook groups at once, because you've made too many other decisions during your daily slave job and that kind of thing. And then when you get home, because you've done that, you can't contribute anything to the truth movement. Working is servitude and slavery, and it's been sold as a method of pride. I'm proud to have a job. I'm glad that I contribute to society. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're giving taxes to pay the interest on foreign debt that bankers made up out of thin air, and that is the entire purpose of your job. You might be able to help people with their tires here or there. You might be able to give somebody a medication and send them back to work. But understand that the one overarching principle of your life is to support the state and its enslavement of you and every single one of your customers. That is a job. That is why I am employophobic. I cannot do it physically. It makes me sick. I have panic attacks. I have a moral aversion to scumbaggery, and I see employment as one of those forms of scumbaggery. A very all-invasive form of scumbaggery, mind you. And
controls your life longer than anything else during the day?
Oh, no, I think we control our life.
Does your old lady work?
Yeah, well, she tries.
But, I mean, does she like work at one of these scumbaggery jobs?
Well, she's working at an organic cafe for a friend.
That's
and
cool.
She's helping do organic spray-free gardening for her own clients.
That's in the conscious community, and also, more or less in the transformational community. So that's tits.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to throw everything in all of a sudden and join the truth and blah blah blah. I mean, ultimately you've got to do what works right for you, because you don't have any idea how many ways the New World Order controls you until you start digging. And then you realize, oh my God, they're controlling me in a million different ways. Ergo, the solution is not, oh my God, how do I resist a million different ways? Just resist one way. Okay? Figure out how to do that. All right, what do they want me to do? They want me to not think. Okay? So it means every moment you're thinking, you're working against them. What else do they want me to do? They want me to pay taxes. Okay. So if you do your taxes right and stuff like that, you'll actually be able to work a way to not pay them taxes. That's another one. They want me to eat GMO food. Find out the labels and find out the manufacturers, processors, don't eat the GMO food. And you work one by one, by one, by one, by one, each and every little thing that they've got controlling you. And up to this point, I've probably got about maybe 10,000 changes that have gone in my life in the last 10 years of different methods by which I'm no longer controlled by the system and no longer feed the system. And I've still got a million more ways to go.
Well, that food one's a big one right there. Quit eating, processed sugar, quit eating, preservatives,
Microwaved food.
Right.
If you get rid of wireless routers and things like that, wireless mouses and keyboards, that kind of thing, the Bluetooth out of those, just from your computer, that's 30,000 microwatts. And then the mouse itself, that's another 30,000 microwatts, and then back to the keyboard as well. So you've got 90,000 microwatts. The recommended safe level is about 1 or 2, maybe 4 microwatts, just sitting there with your computer and a wireless keyboard and mouse. That's not including the wireless router, which gives you another 45,000 microwatts. Now, this is electronic radiation that is bathing all of your cells, and it's cooking you very, very slowly.
Makes sense. It's a scary, stark look at reality.
Yeah, and if you look up EMF or EMR on my YouTube channel, you can see some of these presentations that's been done by Paul Waddell of safespace.net.nz. He's one of only 3 or 4 people qualified in this country to actually come in with the tools, test your bedroom, test your kitchen, test your smart meter, test your wireless stuff, everything, right? And then gives you a couple of filter plugs for the things that you can plug into your quad boards that you run in your computers on or whatever. He got me down from, I think we were up at 35,000 microwatt readings, and that's included all of the different things. So I've got 2 computers in here, that's 30,000 each. These aren't your body just receiving one of these signals at a varied range. It's receiving all of them on the same range. So you got 5 different sources of 30,000 microwatts in here. We got it down to 14.
Wow.
After an afternoon of testing, putting in wired keyboards, wired mouses, turning off the Bluetooth on the Macs, which are automatically on, and turning off the wireless on the router and using a cable instead. Boom, done. And it's amazing. These are like real practical things that you can do. And the problem with the truth movement, the esoteric, the occult news in general, especially global news, is you can't do a frickin' thing about it. All right, think about it. You got terrorist attack that happens in London. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. You can't do anything about it. It's already happened. So you're going to sit here for many, many hours digesting it, talking with people about it. What have you achieved? Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. You think about EMF and electronic wireless radiation. Within an hour or so, you can cut the amount of radiation that you're being exposed to by as much as 30,000%. All right, it might be worth spending a bit of time on.
That's a very good example. That's a very rational, logical thought.
Yeah.
Worry about something that you absolutely cannot change as far as like who's going to be the next president of the United States, or get some goddamn, radiation off your person to the tune of about 30,000 goddamn percent, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Fucking A.
And let's say you're exposed to radiation, as you are in the northern hemisphere, because when Fukushima went off, the air and the water of the Pacific all became really highly irradiated, and because you got the circulation effect of the Earth spinning like that,
and the trade
winds, a lot of that bad radiation is not only staying in the northern hemisphere, it's continuing to swirl around and around. So it's getting the whole northern hemisphere like that, bays the whole time. Now, that's very scary, and you can spend many, many hours on that. But if you put a bit of ginger in warm water overnight, a whole bunch of sprouts will come off of it. And then you can cut that ginger in maybe into 3 pieces and then plant each of them in some soil. And that will start growing 3 whole new ginger plants. All right. Why is that important when it comes to radiation? Because ginger helps to flush radiation from the body.
I didn't know that.
I did not know that either.
Rosemary. You got lavender plants and things like that. If you have your rosemary with your lamb and put it in your meals, that helps to get radiation out of the body. You got garlic. You want to have some spaghetti bolognese tonight. Put a hell of a lot of garlic in it. Flushes radiation right out of the body. You can grow these things yourself, right? Of course, you wouldn't want to grow them in the northern hemisphere because they'll be irradiated too.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Enjoy your meal.
Right. But yeah, so Fukushima is the biggest disaster that's ever come along. It's basically what we're getting out of it, right?
Other than the Trump presidency, but they're
about the same.
It's like Abraham Lincoln said, if I didn't laugh, I'd cry.
Right. Yeah. The day that you start wondering and missing George Bush, that's when you know something's gone wrong. You're like, oh, he wasn't so bad. I kind of miss that guy.
I love what Tucker Carlson said about hearing George W. Bush speak. He said it's like watching a drunk man trying to cross an icy street.
Yes. Oh, I think the only thing that made me laugh about the inauguration day was Bush trying to put on a raincoat. I don't know if you saw that, but if you didn't, you should definitely look that up. He's got like a rain slicker he's trying to put on in the stands, and he can't figure it out. It's the most beautiful thing of the whole day. It really is. It's just wonderful.
Even better than his car being pelted with eggs.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's just like looking at it like, I don't understand. I don't understand how this works. Where's the hole go? I don't know. It's like watching a 2-year-old try to do one of those little boards where they have the square goes in the square and the circle goes in the circle, and he's standing there trying to put the square in the circle,
Like that test in Idiocracy, when he's getting this intelligence test, and there's like 2 holes and one giant cube and one tiny little star hole, and one guy's trying to put the cube in the star hole.
Yes.
That's freaking stupid.
That's what was happening on inauguration day for Trump, was Bush trying to put on a raincoat. Like, it was sad. You'll have to look it up. It's really great.
Oh my god! Oh, so that happened during Trump's inauguration.
It did, yes. It was during Trump's inauguration. He was when it was raining, and they got a video of him trying to put on a raincoat. Like this is the leader of the free world, right? And they apparently can't figure out rain covers for the dignitaries. Yeah.
It's like you've created a temporary mall for like close to 1 million people to turn up and have a look at this thing, whatever, and you've got no rain cover for the leaders of the free world here, bro.
Yeah.
You stupid idiots.
Yep.
Plan for rain. Always plan for rain.
That's right. Always.
In fact, that might have been the reason why I didn't go to the cannabis protest yesterday, actually, because it was raining. I was just like, oh man, I've got so many videos to edit and stuff like that. I just can't bother.
Tell me your opinion on that. I don't know your opinion on the cannabis protest.
Well, I have 2 cannabis convictions, one for possession for supply,
okay,
and one for simple possession. And it was the law that caused the harm to me, and is the reason why I have, my phobias and stuff like that now, because I got really badly traumatized when the cops busted me for selling weed when I was a young kid at university. And ever since then, surprisingly enough, the traumas that were inflicted upon me and the problems that I have to deal with are greatly helped by medicinal cannabis,
Right.
which is illegal. Right. So I'm still breaking the law in order to keep stable because of the damage that breaking the law initially did to me. Mm-hmm. Now, it wasn't the cannabis that did the damage to me, it was the frickin' law.
Right.
And so on one hand, everybody's talking about, we need medicinal cannabis, and I don't want to talk about legalization and so on and so forth. It's the illegalization of cannabis that is what is causing the harm and the sickness and the
right.
bad shit in society, in my opinion.
And that ties into when we were talking about the prison system. It's creating criminals from something that doesn't need to be happening.
Yeah. About 700 or so New Zealanders currently in prison for non-violent drug offences. Per capita, we have the highest arrest rate in the world, where a New Zealander is arrested approximately every 30 minutes for cannabis. And that's just a shocking statistic, considering we have between 10 and 20% of the population who use on an almost daily basis. Which is higher per capita smoking rate than every country in the world, with the exception of one, which is Jamaica, which has, incidentally, the highest percentage of reggae music appreciation in the world, and New Zealand has the second highest per capita appreciation.
I didn't know that about New Zealand.
Yeah, so there's a lot of weed here. There's a lot of Maoris are really, really good people to hang around and have fun with, right? Good sense of humour and very generous and warm, Mm-hmm. It's kind of like going back in time to if you pulled up on some deserted island or something, the friendly natives would take you in or whatever, except now we've been totally colonised, so the natives are just one of you, and you're like, that's really weird. There's actually no difference between us. We're just people who can sit around, share a joint, have a few laughs. Oh, do you want a beer, bro? Hell yeah, bro. Fuck yeah.
So do you think the reason why it's not legalized there has to do with the government and the prescription drug industry? Is that...
It's to do with one man, Peter Dunn. He's this... For a man called Dunn, he never seems to finish what he starts. So he's been in Parliament for about as long as I've been in talk radio and activism, right? So about 10 years as far as I've been paying attention. And in that time, there have been a number of successive governments, maybe 3, 4 different term governments that have come through. And he has been a part of those governments every single time under one condition, that there will be no talking about the legalization of cannabis. Right, and now, because of the overwhelming public pressure, the legalization that's happening of medical cannabis in Australia and the United States, for example, is now putting a lot of public pressure on the issue. And so he's starting to allow people, and this is the bullshit that I love. I love about this country, that people will just fucking take this and then go, cool, this problem's being solved. I don't have to do anything anymore. They go like this. All right, well, I'm going to allow doctors to prescribe cannabidiol oil to patients who really need it. Oh, okay. Are you going to put subsidies on those like you do with all the dangerous pharmaceutical drugs? No. So this stuff's going to be really, really fucking prohibitively expensive then, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's going to be prohibitively expensive, and it'll be up to the doctor whether or not he actually decides to give it to you. And most doctors won't.
Right.
Yeah. And you call that making medical cannabis available. You think that's good enough, do you? It's just terrible, man. And there's just not enough movement on that front, and there's been virtually none for a decade because of that one man, Peter. And his son is selling synthetic cannabis.
Oh my gosh.
All right. At the same time that his dad is keeping the real cannabis illegal, his son is creating the synthetic stuff and selling it on the open market.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's gonna look really professional.
That's crazy. So.
All right. Well,
Well,
there's a.
I think
Yeah.
this is. I think we're good. We got some really good stuff, and I'm really glad that we got to talk to you today. I look forward to going and researching some of those names you gave me, and maybe learn a little bit more about New Zealand politics for sure.
It'll certainly be affecting you sooner rather than later. They test things here and then they export them to other countries a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Well, it's the ideal, isn't it?
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
What was your name? Sorry.
Oh, my name is Laura.
Laura. All right.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.